Denmark went to the polls on Tuesday for a much-anticipated early election called by struggling Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen amid a post-Greenland crisis poll bounce. Frederiksen's Social Democrats once again came out on top, but suffered their worst result in more than a century, with the political landscape fragmenting on both left and right, and neither the left or right-wing blocs securing a majority. So in this video, we're going to explain the run-up to the election, the results, and what the next Danish government might look like. We've heard a lot of talk about Europe de-risking or decoupling from the US recently, so in the latest edition of our magazine, we thought we'd discuss whether this is actually feasible and why Europe could still struggle without US backing. That's just one of 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. To start with, some key background. Danish politics has traditionally been organised into two multi-party blocs. On the left is the Red Bloc, which is led by the Social Democrats, whose official ballot paper party abbreviation is confusingly A, and on the right is the Blue Bloc, led by the mainstream centre-right Venstre, more understandably abbreviated as V. Usually, elections would result in the formation of either a red or blue government, with the premiership filled by either the Social Democratic or Venstre leader. For instance, at the 2019 election, the Red Bloc won a majority, enabling Social Democratic leader Mette Frederiksen to become Prime Minister, although she led a single-party minority government, with Red Bloc parliamentary support. However, at the 2022 election, despite the Red Bloc winning a, albeit tiny, majority, Frederiksen opted to form a centrist government that bridged the red and blue blocs. This consisted of her Social Democrats, their traditional rivals Venstre, and a new party, the Moderates, which does not align with either the red or blue blocs. But this coalition has proven remarkably unpopular. One of its first big moves, scrapping a public holiday in order to boost the defence budget, did not go down well. The three governing parties had, combined, about 50.1% of the vote in 2022, but by December 2025 they were polling in the low 30s. A dreadful set of results at the local elections last November reflected this unpopularity. The Social Democrats received their worst result ever and lost the Copenhagen mayoralty for the first time in history, with it taken by the Green Left. Venstre also lost ground across the country, and the moderates hardly registered on the scoreboard. With an election due by the end of October 2026, things were not looking good for Mette Frederiksen. While the Social Democrats were still the largest party in the polls, their share of the Red Bloc vote was historically low, and the Blue Bloc had actually overtaken Red in polling. However, in a twist of fate, as the world entered 2026, US President Donald Trump redirected his attention to Greenland once again, reviving his threats to annex the Danish semi-autonomous territory. These threats seemed even more dangerous as they re-emerged just after the US attacked Venezuela and abducted its president Nicolas Maduro in early January. The Danish government's firm response in defence of Danish and Greenlandic sovereignty, which included rallying European and NATO allies to join Denmark in boosting their military footprint on the island, was well received by the public. Polls in the aftermath showed a rally round the flag effect, with a bump in support for the Social Democrats and the Moderates, whose leader, Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen, was prominent in the Danish response alongside Prime Minister Frederiksen. And so, hoping to capitalise on this change in fortune, Mette Frederiksen announced on the 26th of February that she was calling an early election for the 24th of March, some 7 months ahead of schedule. However, arguably, Greenland was not as major a campaign theme as much of the international press made out. Domestic political issues were hotly debated, including taxation, cost of living, migration, water quality, the housing crisis, renewables and nuclear energy, and even animal welfare in Denmark's massive pork industry. In the campaign, Mette Frederiksen gave no indication that she would change course on her hardline immigration and asylum policies that have become so synonymous with the Danish Social Democrats. However, with her proposal for a wealth tax on the richest Danes and the fact that the election was called right as her government passed a food voucher bill backed by parties on the left, Frederiksen has clearly been trying to win back voters who have ditched the Social Democrats for the likes of the Green Left and others. So let's now jump into the actual results. The Social Democrats came first with just under 22% and 38 seats. That's down 12 seats from last time and the party's worst result in more than a century. The Green Left rose to second for the first time ever with 11.6% and 20 seats. Venstre came third and suffered their worst result ever with 10% and 18 seats. The Libertarian Liberal Alliance won 16 seats, as did the staunchly anti-immigration and anti-Islam Danish People's Party, arguably the biggest winner of the night, jumping up 11 seats. Then you have the moderates on 14 seats, the Conservatives on 13, the eco-socialist Red-Green Alliance on 11, social liberals and right-wing Denmark Democrats both on 10, the environmentalist Alternative on 5, and the far-right Citizens Party on 4. Not including the 4 Greenlandic and Faroese seats, that leaves the Red Bloc with 84 seats, but short of the 90 needed for a majority, and the Blue Bloc on 77, with the moderates once again the kingmakers in the middle. Now, these are interesting results for a whole load of reasons. The Greenland bounce that the Social Democrats enjoyed is yet more evidence of Donald Trump being an electoral liability for the global right, particularly the European right. However, we shouldn't make out that this was a good result for the Social Democrats. They retained their first place position and were perhaps saved from a greater electoral disaster. But, at the end of the day, this is still a historically bad result for the Social Democrats. In fact, it was a historically bad result for both of the two traditionally mainstream parties, the Social Democrats and Venstre, the latter of which no longer has much claim to leading the Blue Bloc. The performance of parties on the hard right to far right within the Blue Bloc, particularly the Danish People's Party, is another election story, perhaps undermining the narrative that the Social Democrats' hardline immigration policies are effective at neutralising the far right. Overall, there was a further fragmentation on both left and right, complicating government formation. In fact, the new parliament is the most fragmented in history, with all 12 competing parties winning seats. So, what will the next government look like? We see two main possibilities, both led by Mette Frederiksen and her Social Democrats. The first is a mostly red bloc government joined by the moderates. This would feature the Social Democrats, Green Left, Social Liberals and the moderates, and would have 82 seats. That's 8 short of a majority, but this could survive with parliamentary support from the Red-Green Alliance and the Alternative, which are both red bloc but very unlikely to join a government. The stumbling block here, though, is that the moderates have said that they don't want to join a government that relies on votes from the Red-Green Alliance. The moderates Lars Løkke Rasmussen would prefer another bloc-spanning coalition. You could, for instance, form a 93-seat coalition comprising the Social Democrats, Venstre, moderates, Conservatives and Social Liberals. But this is the least likely of our two suggested outcomes. Venstre's leader said after the election that he would not form another government with the Social Democrats. Plus, a 5-party coalition would be uniquely unwieldy. There's never been a peacetime government with more than 4 member parties. Ultimately, the coming weeks will be frantic, with party leaders drawing and breaking red lines and seeking to leverage their influence whilst negotiating the next Danish government. As we mentioned earlier, the latest edition of our magazine Too Long is out now, which means that if you order a physical edition, it'll be shipped to you immediately, and if you buy a digital edition, it'll land in your inbox straight away. No pre-ordering, no waiting. Plus, if you subscribe while you're there using code SPRING26, you'll get your first copy for as little as £4.99, as well as 20% off every future issue as long as you stay subscribed. One other thing to know is that if you're more of a listener than a reader, which would be fair enough, we are a YouTube channel after all, then this time round we've recorded every article in Too Long, with each of our writers doing their best audiobook impression while narrating their own articles.
The New Age of Empires. Written and read by Georgina Finley.
If you want that, then you can sign up to our new Too Long and TLDR Party bundle. That gets you a copy of the magazine, but also access to TLDR Party, our new subscription. Party members not only get access to the audio versions of every article, they also get access to our documentaries, like our new series Leaders and Losers and our upcoming documentary we're recording in Greenland right now. They get access to our behind-the-scenes podcast The Bullpen, our bonus podcast The Last Move, their name printed in every issue of our magazine, and more. Find out more about TLDR Party by clicking the link in the description, where you'll also find a link to subscribe to Too Long and our documentaries.